Good evening, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So the Federal Reserve went on a major bond buying spree last week, and they bought a whole bunch of mortgage-backed securities to the tune of like $200 billion. It was an insane amount. And the idea behind purchasing all these mortgage-backed securities is that being the buyer of these mortgages or these mortgage-backed securities, these MBSs, is that they could keep the interest rates low. And if they could keep the interest rates low, then people would be able to buy these homes at a lesser interest rate and hopefully adding some strength to the housing market. But this had an unintended consequence to it. So these mortgage lender providers out there, they're not like banks. They're like non-bank banks. They're pretty much just private businesses. And they don't have access to the Federal Reserve like a typical bank would. So when they sell you a loan, when they get you to sign the bottom line, they take that loan, they jumble it up with a bunch of other loans, and they sell that off as a mortgage-backed security. Now, if the interest rates change, like they sell it to you and then the interest rates rise by the time they're able to sell the mortgage-backed security off, they're going to be out a bunch of money. So what they do is they buy a hedge against that. They have like an insurance policy that says we're going to be made whole if the interest rates change. So typically this is not a big deal. I mean, they buy these things on margin, so they put up a little bit of money to buy this position, this insurance position, this hedge. And to kind of give you an idea on how margin works, a good example of it was back in the early 80s, the Hunt brothers, when they were trying to corner the silver market, they were buying silver futures on margin. So they would put up a little bit of money to buy a whole bunch of money or a whole bunch of dollars worth of silver future contracts. And they were like buying them all up as much as they could. And they just kept buying these futures on margin, until they raised the margin requirements on them and they couldn't come up with the money. And if you can't come up with the money, you got to sell off your position. Well, something very similar to that has taken place with these mortgage lenders. So that little bit of money that they were putting up to buy this hedge position, those brokers who sell the hedge were doing margin calls on them, saying the volatility from the Federal Reserve's purchasing of all these mortgage-backed securities is too much to handle and we're not taking this position anymore. You need to give us a whole lot more money, is bottom line. And they're like, we don't have the money. Well, they have the money, but they don't have that much money to provide to these hedge brokers. So this has put them in a very bad position, and a lot of them are complaining that they're going to go bankrupt if the Federal Reserve continues at this pace of buying these mortgage-backed securities in this vast amount, causing the volatility. It's really hard to wrap your head around on this one. I'm going to leave links down in the description for you guys, but that's essentially what ended up happening. And these guys, these mortgage providers, they're sitting in a very strange position themselves as they want to provide these loans to people, but because of this virus, they're having a hell of a time trying to get people to sign these loans and to buy houses, because nobody wants to go and view or look at or even, attempt to buy a house right now, considering they don't know what the environment's going to be like. They don't know if the economy is going to tank. They don't know if they're going to even have a job. So selling loans right now is a very difficult task because of everything that's happening with this virus. And it's put these mortgage providers in a very bad position as far as, the chances of them going bankrupt is getting very big. One of the ways that, these guys have described it is that the Federal Reserve trying to do an operation don't have a scalpel. All they have is a sledgehammer. And that's very much how it is that they just went in there and just bam, hit this mortgage-backed security market with a whole bunch of money. And the people on the other end of it who are providing the insurance are saying, we're not dealing with this on a margin anymore. We need a lot more money to deal with the insurance on this stuff. The very interesting thing that's happening right now. And one of the other things I was reading about was the Airbnb market has taken a tank because people aren't traveling now. A lot of people have purchased these homes intending to rent them out through the Airbnb style. And since nobody's traveling, they need to come up with the money in order to provide to, for their mortgage, and they can't do it. They don't have like the renters out there. So I have a funny feeling that all this Airbnb that was taking place that everybody was saying was like an awesome business to be in, well, I think there's going to be a lot more rentals coming up, and I see the rents dropping like crazy because of it. especially considering that, so many people are going to be losing their jobs right now that, the people who live in houses right now that are renting or just apartments or whatever, rent's going to be a very difficult thing to come up with. I've talked to a few people already who are saying that, my job is cut hours or I don't even have a job anymore. I'm going back on unemployment and I'm just going to keep all my money just for food. I don't really care about rents. And, they say that anyway, I don't even have to pay my rent. I can start skipping rent. So evictions are like, the idea of being evicted is like people like are not even scared about it right now. Where before, if you miss your month rent, you're going to be, out of here, and there'll be a million people over there who's ready to take your apartment from you. Now they're just like, there's nobody out there who's willing to pay rent. So it's getting, I wouldn't say nobody's out there willing to pay rent, but there's a lot of people out there who are talking about not being able to pay rent. So it's like a very, very odd situation, and it's amazing on how it happened over the course of just like 2 or 3 weeks now. This isn't something that got led up into this. It happened all of a sudden. Anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.